Hi everyone, I'm here to do some looks with Mercury Retrograde. So I'm back to voiceover today just to kind of make the video not so long. So for this first look, I really wanted to try a complementary color scheme. So as you can see, I'm first going in with this deep blue shimmer. It has a slight dark gray, almost black base that you can kind of see as I'm blending it out. You can see the base come through. So this is a surprisingly deep shimmer for what is usually perceived to be a pretty soft palette. So I don't really know how this shimmer would place with other mattes in this palette, but the way I'm using it today, it's fine. So you can see here it applies on really nicely, and now I'm going to take the peachy shade, and this is what I mean by the complementary color scheme I wanted to go for, because blue and orange are complementary colors. So I'm going to be blending out the shimmer and adding in the contrast using this peachy shade here, and as you can see, it just makes for such a lovely kind of almost ocean sunset kind of look. Blue and orange are probably one of my most favorite complementary color schemes in terms of how easy it is to make it look good, and it's definitely one of the most popular ones I see with all sorts of just popular media. It is just so easy to work with, unlike red and green or purple and yellow, which are considerably more difficult to make work in terms of color schemes. So here I sprayed the brush with a little bit of setting spray, and now you can see it's applying on a much more thicker, much more creamier. So this definitely performs really well with a wet brush. A lot of her shimmers kind of were like that. I wanted to use Nebula, but Nebula does have glitter, like non-eye safe glitter in it, so I could not use that. So I'm using this shade instead to add just a little bit of twinkle in the middle. I really was heartbroken that I could not use Nebula, but I cannot condone the use of glitters, so I did not. I decided a little bit of depth would have been appropriate. I have found one of my most favorite eye brushes ever. This is from Hakuhodo, and I need to go back and buy like a million more of these. It just is the perfect micro blending brush. I don't know the name because it's not on the handle, but I'll find it and I'll make a video about eye brushes someday. But you can see it just adds the slightest amount of depth that I wanted, just so that this look would have a little bit more contrast. And then I kind of felt like taking the rest and kind of contouring under my under eye fat. So that just kind of adds a little bit more depth. And then for my under eye definition, I'm using the shade here. I didn't want to use the blue on the lower lash line because I wanted to keep most of the focus on the upper eyelid. So I thought this would be fine, and it looks really nice. The shimmers from Huda almost always are so pretty. I always love her shimmers more than her mattes. I thought I could still use a little bit of definition just to make the eyes look more defined, so I'm taking the same blue shimmer and using it as if it was eyeliner, and it actually adds a really nice finishing touch to the look. So that's it for this look, and now I'm going to go back to talking to talk about what's on the rest of my face. Okay, this is the final look. So I'm voicing over the eyeshadow part, but I'll talk through the finished look part. I think that's a good middle ground so that I don't always have such long videos, because I do feel bad sometimes when my videos are too long. But this is the finished look. I really love how this turned out. This is really good. The blue shade definitely performs better with a wet brush. With a wet brush, it almost becomes creamy and it just lays on so beautifully, so I definitely had no complaints there. The mattes were really easy to use as well. I was really bummed that I can't use Nebula. Nebula's a glitter, so I was hoping to use Nebula in my look because it's the perfect silvery blue. It reminds me of Terra Moon's, I think Moon Lily or something. So I'm really bummed about that, but I ended up using the other shade that you saw instead, which performed great. The shimmers in this palette seem to have that almost creamy, squishy texture, so it feels almost super shocky. So I feel like it actually performs better with a brush instead of a finger, because your finger is just going to push it down, whereas a wet brush can really kind of pull it up and out of the pan. So this is the one time where actually I think a brush is better. I really love how this turned out. I think this was so much fun, and I'm totally pumped to do the next two looks with this palette. I'm going to finish up with what's on my face. So I used Doe Morning Dew 2.0 lashes, really pretty. These are kind of my favorite of the 2.0s so far. I just think these are a really great balance because they're long at the end, but they're super short in the middle. So for blush, I used two blushes. I first used the Kylie Cosmetics blush. This is the new blush, so the new formula 2-on-1 Kitten Baby. I've never used Kylie Cosmetics before this, and this is like the only product. I only own two blushes from her, and that's it. But this is like the closest I can get to like that Korean orange blush, but with a little bit more pigment to it. So I really like this. I use that as a base. And then I went over that with Kaleidos Joyride, which is this blush here. I put this on the outer part of my face and under my eyes for a little bit more depth. I contoured using Westman Atelier Biscuit before I powdered, so that's that. And then for highlighter, I used the Odin's Eye Alva 2 highlighter palette. I used the blue highlighter on my cheeks, and then I used the sparkly white one on my nose, and I also kind of put it up at the peak of my brows. You can really see how it just kind of adds to that glitter effect. Yeah, you can just see the nice effect that gives. They're really pretty. Line my lips with a nude lip liner. I use Buxom Incognito, and then before I put my makeup on, my lips were really dry, so I used the Dior Lip Glow Oil in Cherry to hydrate my lips beforehand. Now my lips were still pretty hydrated, but I didn't want to take it off, so I just put the YSL Tatouage Couture lipstick right on top in the color 39. So as a result, my lips look like I put on a creamy lipstick, but in reality I just put a matte liquid lipstick on top of a balmy preparation. So that's why my lips have such a sheen to it. This is usually a lot more kind of natural matte. Now this formula, I think the formula itself feels like a lighter version of a traditional Western liquid lipstick, so you wouldn't expect me to like it, but the reason I like this so much and I wish I had more shades is because the applicator, I swear YSL's lip products have the best applicators on the market. The liquid lipsticks from YSL, I've never run into a product with a better applicator, ever. I hope you guys enjoyed this first look. We'll move on to the next one. On to the next look. Alright, this next look is going to be very, very easy to do. I just use one matte shadow and a bunch of shimmers. So I'm starting off with Vortex, and I'm going to be using this to form the base of the look. So I'm using this to define the shape of the eyeshadow I want, how deep I want it to go. This eyeshadow does not build true to pan, so just a heads up for anybody considering getting this. Vortex and the other deeper mattes in this palette, they feel a lot harder pressed and they feel a little bit more on the dry side, so they're a little bit more difficult to work with, and they don't ever build up completely looking like what they do inside the palette. I still think it looks great. It still does go relatively deep in contrast to the other palette pastels in this palette, so it's not really bothersome to me, but I can see why it would be bothersome to other people. So just make of that what you will. And so I'm just kind of alternating between packing and blending to just get the shape that I want. Now this metallic, it's one of those kind of like hamburger patty metallics, for lack of a better term, with all the different colors mixed in. This is probably one of my favorite metallic formulas from wherever. It is so pretty, and you can just kind of see the effect on my eyelids. More or less just speaks for itself. This metallic formula here, it's very squishy. It feels almost super chalky, but it's definitely not like a total putty. It picks up a lot better with a brush than with a finger. The finger, I feel, just kind of smooshes it around. The brush definitely does a better job of really getting into the formula and transferring the formula from the pan to the bristles to your eyelid. So you can see here I'm just adding some depth with that. Really, really pretty. And then I'm building up a little bit more Vortex, see if I can get it a little bit darker, but that's really about as dark as it's going to go. And then I just am gonna go back in with the other metallic I used earlier, just to make sure that I can get a nice clean blend between those two. Then I'm gonna just test out this shade on my lower lash line, again for that definition of my under eye fat. I pretty much always do this with like every single look that I ever do. I just really like how it looks. And then lastly, I just want to make sure everything's nice and clean, particularly the edges of Vortex. So I'm just using that bone colored shade in this palette to make sure things are tidied up a little bit. Again, I found Vortex a little bit tricky to work with. And that's this look really. Easy peasy pie. And that's it. Okay, so this is the finished look, and as you can see, the shimmer that I have on is really pretty. This is my favorite Huda shimmer formula that she's ever done, and I really wish that she would just make all her shimmers these. The dark shade that I use here, it's called Vortex that I used here. It's hard pressed and it's very dry, so as you can see, you can build it up, but it does take a while. It does blend out pretty well, but I did find that to be kind of a really tricky matte to use, which kind of tracks well with what other people have said about this. But overall, really love this look. This shimmer really is just everything. A lot of this, it's kind of a similar formula to what's in New Nude and Naughty Nude. I just love it. Wish you would do it more often. And there are several shades like this in Rose Quartz, so just, you know, this is like her signature metallic formula. It's just so pretty. So let me just go over quickly what's on the rest of my face. So I contoured with the Cosmetics stick that I really like. And then for blush, I needed to use something that would kind of match Vortex, and so I was looking for something a little bit less warm, so I used the Etude House blush. You can see it's such a unique color. I'm really glad I have it now. It's the sleepy one. It's also really cute. And then for eyes, I have the Doe Lashes Cloud 9 Here is the packaging. This is the version 1.0 Cloud 9, so it has that stiffer band. I use the Pat McGrath Bridgerton highlighter, the lighter colored one. I don't really think it tracks that well on my skin if my skin is too matte, and this Etude House blush is very mattifying, so it's difficult to get it to adhere to my skin, so that's why it looks a little more subdued today. I wish I had more cream highlighters. Doing this look kind of made me realize I have a deficiency of cream highlighters. I'm definitely going to look into those this year. But other than that, that was nice. And I like the highlighter on literally any other skin finish except super ultra matte. But I've noticed bake highlighters sometimes have that problem just because of how densely packed they are. And then lastly, for lips, I lined my lips with Buxom Incognito, which is it's not the formula that you can get anymore, but that's what I used. And then I used this is also being discontinued. This is the MAC C Sheer. This is the Luster lipstick in the color C Sheer. It looks like this right here, a really pretty rose color. It's been discontinued and it's been replaced with the Luster Glass lipsticks, which so far have been receiving really great reviews. People really like them. I would be interested in them if it weren't for the fact that MAC is expensive. I wish I was a MAC lip collector, but I'm not. But that was it. And then I just felt like it wasn't opaque enough, it wasn't really glossy enough, and I know the Luster Glass lipsticks are like a little bit more kind of translucent, very Korean inspired, and they're a little bit more glassy, so I can definitely see why these got discontinued. So I ended up going over it with the YSL Water Stain in the shade 617. This is a really great formula, so I ended up kind of going over on the inner part of my lips just to kind of add some glossiness back, and then that's what my lips went over. I did go over my Cupid's bow lip just to kind of make my lips look a little bit more dolly today, just kind of was feeling the mood, and that's the look. So I hope you guys enjoyed this look, and we're gonna move on to the third look. And yeah, we're gonna move on to the third look. Alright, so for this third look, I actually did have a dinner to go to with my mom's friend. She was making some dumplings. So this look was very, very soft, nothing too extreme because I didn't want to show up with like editorial eyeshadow on my face. That would have been kind of weird. So I'm testing out a pinkier look today, so I'm gonna get to use some of the pinkier mattes. And this one was so nice to work with. It felt so creamy and smooth, and it blended out really easily. I used the Rare Beauty eyeshadow primer for almost all of these if I remember correctly. And yeah, as you can see here, it just looks really nice. Now I kind of fuddled up this look a little bit. You'll see in the next steps, I kind of was mixing together colors that I thought would work, but ultimately they all were kind of the same level of depth, and so they just end up looking muddy. So you can see here I'm trying to add just some like color variety, and it just kind of ends up going all to like looking like a bit of a mess. So but that's okay because the whole entire look in the end was super soft, definitely super daily appropriate, nothing scary. So it is what it is. This is probably my least favorite look, but it's also probably kind of the most like, you know, day appropriate one too. So that's kind of what it's looking like. It's pretty muddy. So then I added in some of this warmer, almost orange toned matte, kind of see if I could just add some brightness back, and it helped a little bit. You can see where I'm adding it. It is visible. It does kind of show up a little bit, but ultimately this look is going to mostly be pulled together by the metallics. So you can see here I'm using the pinky toned one, and you can see on my finger, really, really pretty. It reminds me of one of the shimmers in Natasha Denona, although it's not as glittery. The particles are much more fine, as you can see here. And I just kind of dumped this everywhere. It works as usual, it works better with a brush, so then once I've dumped it all over my eyelid, I'm going to go back in the center with a brush where I want more opacity. And then I thought I hadn't used ultraviolet yet. I do want to make sure I use that, so I just put that on the lower lash line. And the pop of color interest did kind of help with the variety, although this color has a bit of a grayish base, so probably not the best choice. And then I'm just using that white, almost toppery formula metallic on my inner corner. One of my favorite shades in this palette. It reminds me of one of the shades in gold. Has a very, very similar kind of consistency and finish. So I really like that. So yeah, I was just not super happy, so I thought let me just put on some eyeliner. That's the Hello Kitty Pixie eyeliner. I thought the shimmer finish and the color would go well, so I'm just using that to make some wings. And with the lashes on, the wing liner definitely helped. So I also put it in my inner corner just to kind of add a little bit of definition and sharpness since the rest of the look was so pale. And that's it. Okay, so this is the finished look. I'm just in time because it's almost time for me to go, but this look actually does coincidentally match my sweater, which I will be doing I will be doing a little fashion thing soon. But anyways, this is the finished look. My lashes are hanging on for dear life, so I really hope they survive the dinner, but we'll see. They are the Big Cat Energy from Doe Lashes, so it's the mix of the brown and black fibers. They did tease something pretty big happening in this summer, so I'm definitely really excited. We'll be keeping an eye out. I'm gonna move on also to the rest of my face. So I contoured my face using the Flower Nose Teddy Bear Contour. I just was feeling lazy and want to use powder products today. And then I used the Jaclyn Loose Blush for my blush. Perfect matching pink. It is in the shade Love Poem, which you can see that's just the perfect shade of pink for me for this look. I also used the Flower Nose highlighter in the center of my face. And then for my cheek highlighter, which you can see has a subtle lavender tone, I used this ColourPop Super Shock highlighter called Still Loading. This is from their Y2K kind of digital collection. As I've mentioned before, I feel like this is I love their big Super Shock highlighters and the big packaging, and I wish they would bring back their old ones. And I'm so mad they never did, and I guess they never will because of course. And then for lips, I used the Romand Juicy Lasting Tint in the shade Funky Melon, which is this product right here. It more or less looks the same color as what you get. I've been using this a lot more than I thought I ever would. Like, I bought this mostly as like I want to take that risk with this color of pink, but I'm not on TikTok still, so I had no idea that the Dior blush had exploded until I tried to get it and it sold out, and I was just like, but apparently cool pinks are basically experiencing like a resurgence in popularity pretty much almost entirely because of Dior pink. So if you go to other websites and look for similarly cool toned pink blushes, you'll see they're also sold out, because everyone's trying to find duplicate shades or similar shades to that, and like the color of lips getting really popular, the eyeshadows getting really popular. Like, cool pinks are just having a thing, which I think is pretty cool, because I know in Korea there's not been a lot of cool toned representation for people whose personal color was like winter, cool winter especially, and also cool summer, and now there's more cool toned products in Korea too, so it's definitely really cool. And this is just something I never expected to like. I never really thought of myself as a cool tone person, but I actually think I pull it off surprisingly well, which is really fun. I actually realized when I was doing this look that I don't think I ended up using the pastel blue in any of the looks, which is so my bad. So I'm gonna be doing a fourth look right after this, so that way you guys can actually see me use all the shades in the palette. Total negligence on my part, so a fourth look is coming right after this one. Alright, fourth unexpected but necessary look, because your girl forgot to use the pastel blue. This is a beautiful turquoise. I don't know how, it feels almost borderline not pastel because it is quite saturated actually, but it's definitely going to be the most user-friendly because of that saturation. You can see it really shows up, it blends out so well. It felt, again, much creamier than Vortex, for instance. And I'm just going to be using that to establish the structure of the look. I'm going to be tucking a darker shadow underneath all of this, so I'm just establishing the boundaries. And now I wanted to try this matte here. I used it in the first look, but I only used a very little bit, so this time I'm really going to try and use it to add some dramatic depth. And as you can see here, again, I'm not getting that true to pan that I wish I could have gotten out of this. Now it shows up nice and deep, it's very pretty, but it's not quite what I was expecting anyways when I opened the eyeshadow palette and I look inside. So similar to Vortex, it also was a little bit harder pressed. However, it was not as difficult to work with as Vortex by a long shot, so I still did find the shade to be very pretty. I'm just going to dump it on my lower lash line there. Could have used a more precise brush. I'm going to very slightly blend between these two shades, but not very much, because I'm going to be using metallic later and I don't want these two shades to be too muddy. And then you can see I'm just trying to pack it on again, but it's not getting much deeper than that. It won't get much deeper than that. Now I'm going to use this metallic here. I previously had only used it in one look on my lower lash line, and I really wanted to show it off a little more here. So pretty. This is just such a beautiful formula from her. This one was a lot more kind of finger friendly than the other ones in this similar formula. It's just so pretty. I mean, just look at it. And I'm using this to kind of really just hide that transition, make the eyeshadow look more smooth. And then for the lower lash line, I'm adding a little bit of this borderline pastel pinky lavender. Again, it's pretty and saturated for a pastel, but that does mean it's a lot easier to work with. And that just adds some nice color interest. And then I'm going to be using Supernova as the lower lash line highlighter. I wanted it to be a little more subtle just to match everything else, and I also just really like Supernova. Sorry, I went out of focus here. And yeah, that's pretty much this look. And then I just wanted to tidy up the outer corner, make sure it was nice and dark there. No gaps, no skipping. And that's it. It's really pretty. And I just wanted to make sure I used all the shades in this palette for you guys. Okay, so this is the finished look. And you can see here, very cool toned overall. Lots and lots of fun for me. So on my face, I'm wearing the Cloud 9 lashes. These are the 1.0 lashes, and they're hanging on for dear life because I can't seem to get a good lash day today. For my face, I used the Clinique Cheek Pop in Pansy Pop. It is a little bit too pink to be what I consider a true lavender, but it matched with the tones of this eyeshadow really well, so I went with that. And then for highlighter, I used the color Pop Candy Floss. Right here has a bit of a pinky tone to it. Thought it would be really pretty. I was thinking of using purple, but I used that already and I kind of wanted to use this instead. I've definitely said my piece about how much I love these formulas of Super Shock highlighters. So yeah, and I also used it on my nose and kind of on the tops of my brow right here. I contoured my face with M Cosmetics Terra, so that's what's on my face as contour. No bronzer. I don't really like using bronzer with pastel tones. I feel like the undertones clash really big time, so not for me. And then to kind of add that contrast back in, that kind of would make my face look a little bit less washed out. Well, I don't know where I put it, and I'm going to have to find it eventually, and I don't know how I managed to put it in the exact wrong spot, but I used the Romand, kind of the Heritage collection, so the Hanbok collection. I used the Berry Violet Juicy Lasting Tint. It is this really, really neat purple shade here. It is not too terribly dark because of the fact that the Juicy Lasting Tints are not completely opaque, so you can get some nice sheerness to it if you want, and it adds to the cool look. I really enjoyed this palette overall. I think the mattes were really good, were really easy to work with overall. The shimmers are so unique, which is, I love Huda's shimmers the most. I'm really sad that I couldn't use that one glitter shade, because if that had just been a standard metallic, I would have been over the moon, because it's that perfect lavender silvery shimmer shade I'm constantly on the hunt for more of. It's just such a unique shade, but alas, it has glitter, so I'll never touch that ever. So that was a letdown, but every other shade in this palette performed really well. The only thing that you would need to know if you're interested in Mercury Retrograde is that the darkest two mattes in this palette do not build true to pan. This is about the darkest that the one I used today gets, and you saw in the previous looks me using the other darker shade in this palette, Vortex. They do not show up true to pan. They are bit harder pressed, feel a little bit drier. So if you don't like other pastel palettes because you feel like you can't get any good looks out of them and they all look the same with no contrast, definitely consider a palette like Mercury Retrograde, where it's got a pastel pop and then lots of depth to work with. And of course, lots of neutral shimmers to work with. You might have a lot more fun with a palette like that, because pastels definitely are love it or hate it. And I think something like Mercury Retrograde would be really fun to use if you're finding that true pastel palettes with only pastels in them are just not working for you. Thank you guys for watching this video. 4 looks with Mercury Retrograde. I've got so much more content coming. Please do leave a comment if you want to about palettes you might want to see next, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!